Anthony, today we're talking about tax court.
Today we're talking about tax court, and this is something I didn't even know we were going to do this topic today. But I think on Friday I just started rattling off a bunch of things about why tax court might not be the thing people think it is, and then my dad came down, and then he started chewing your ear off.
Yeah, and just listening, I started taking notes, and I was like, "Let's do it."
Yeah, I think so. So I think we're going to have a pretty good episode today.
Okay.
Just talking about tax court.
So what we want to start with tax court is the basics. Why would you perhaps go to tax court? A few of the things that you can appeal in tax court are what?
Filing of a lien.
Okay.
And then a collection if the IRS is filing an improper levy or not agreeing to your reasonable collection alternative, whether that's an installment agreement. Currently, non-collectible status is actually something we fought for and won in tax court, and even installment agreements.
Okay.
Also, when this is big in tax court, a lot of times spent challenging assessments by the IRS of particular, during an audit or something like that.
Yep.
So tax court can be helpful there.
So if you've been issued an IRS 90-day letter, you literally have 90 days from the date on the letter, not the date you got it, to respond to petition if you want to go to tax court. It's important to note if you get that, you shouldn't just ignore it. It's not one of those letters you should leave unopened, because if you don't respond to the IRS at all, you're basically saying, yes, I agree with you, and then that is it. There's no fighting it after that.
Yeah, and make sure when you're counting, you're counting your days correctly too. I'll be talking about my story of when I didn't and what happened there.
91 days.
Oh, doesn't that count? Yeah, I'm like, well.
90.5. So the case is first sent to the Office of Appeals, at which point the IRS can offer to settle.
Yes.
And you're saying, did you say about 90% are settled before even going to tax court?
Most cases, and if you're doing this right, tax court is usually never needed. If you're doing tax law correctly, usually you can avoid tax court. There's a few situations where you do go, and you go where the IRS, for some unknown reason, usually the IRS Office of Appeals is where we get something reasonable, where somebody, pretty talented would come like, oh my God, what are they doing here? Yeah, you're right. We agree with you. Something like that. Or it's something where the IRS appeals officer will say, okay, we see your point, but look, I'm looking at the law that I have in front of me. The law I have in front of me says I have to rule this way. So I don't have any justification. Yes, I have to look at risks of litigation when I deny your request. But in this case, the risks of litigation are very low, so I'm going to deny you. And they might even say, hey, good luck with your petition. They might even say that. So those are usually where we've seen it, where the IRS is just, and for some reason, appeals didn't catch it. They're just acting crazy, or it's a push, and you're willing to push.
Got it. Now, there's a couple different kinds of tax court. There's small tax court. That's for any cases $50,000 and under. Large tax court is for obviously anything over $50,000. And with those, you need to know that neither side can appeal the decision. So once you go to tax court, that's it with small and large tax court. Yeah.
I believe with large you can appeal.
Oh, with a large you can.
I believe so.
Okay, we'll double check on that.
Yeah, we've never had to do that, because usually if you're gonna, usually you can appeal, or at least you can go to district court. But your mechanism is a little bit different. We've never had to do that. We've never appealed tax court decisions. So I guess, most of the times we never need to go to tax court, and the few times we go, it works out.
And small and large tax court are they're more administrative courts.
Right. And it's not, if you look at the Constitution, there's the Article 3 of the Constitution, which is the federal judiciary. And so this is where things do get a little complicated, because this is really something of an executive administrative agency, or half hybrid between Article 1 and 2 of Congress and the president. It's really in between. And this is where most law is done in the world. 98% of all law is done administratively. The whole idea that lawyers go to court, that's a very outdated model. Most attorneys are doing something with an administrative agency.
Right.
And tax court is an administrative agency. There's a judge, and it's in the federal building, the same federal building as the federal court, but it's actually a different branch of it. And that's where some of the appeals rules gets a little crazy to see which one you actually go to.
And there's no jury, so you don't walk into small and large tax
Right.
court expecting to see.
Yeah,
your
and then
peers.
also the court isn't really there all the time. It's a rotating thing where the judge is there for a week, so they put their docket and they got to run through everything. So it's really not. Don't expect like this big sort of like deal where you're going back again and again, and they want to wrap things up.
Yeah,
they really have to. So that's kind of a benefit, because you do. This is the thing. Why you go to tax court over? Why would you take an administrative court when you have federal court? You have the right to sue the IRS in federal court. Why wouldn't you do that? Well, a few problems there. In order to get into federal court, you have to be claiming. You have to usually have a claim for refund. That means you have to pay your taxes. Now sue the federal government. Hey, I don't owe you those taxes. Well, usually that's kind of the problem, right? Like you don't have the money, so you're really not going to get in there. And then federal litigation, it gets you're at $50,000 in a few months. So I mean, it just gets incredibly expensive. So some for large corporations, they're going to go ahead and do that. Mm-hmm. But for even wealthy taxpayers, it's just not a good use, because now, I mean, you've just paid them everything. Now you got to hope and pray after spending a huge amount in attorney fees in federal district court that you prevail. So you really want to have a strong case, and that's why tax court is better. You don't need to pay your taxes to get into tax court. The whole idea is like, I don't want to pay my taxes.
You pay $60 to go to court. That's it.
Yeah.
U.S. District Court, though, there is a jury.
There's a jury.
So that's the difference.
Yeah. And you could probably, I think you might want to, in some cases, you want to get around a jury because that could just be a bunch of time. Use the judge as a finder of fact, because that's a lot of billable hours there.
Mm-hmm. Well, even with small and large tax court, it can be very time consuming from the time you file your petition and you're waiting and finally you hear it's your day to go, and then you wait. You can wait, months and months just to hear what they decided. The debt on the tax debt continues to
accrue interest
the entire time.
That's right.
So that sucks.
Yeah, and also remember we talked about the statute of the CSEDs, your collection statute expiration dates. The IRS has a 10-year clock. Well, when you file a tax court petition, that stops the clock. Oh. Yeah, because that debt is not collectible. So the IRS says, well, if we can't collect on it because of some reason, then we're going to stop it. So, sometimes, people get emotional and say, I'm going to just sue them in tax court. And it's like, well, you better have a claim, because it's not a riskless proposition. Even if you're doing it yourself for free or you're hiring somebody for free, you could still really harm yourself. And people often do. Mm-hmm. And the tax court tries to make it hard for you to hurt yourself, because I see people do it. People get caught, and I think in our next part we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Mm-hmm. But people sort of get caught in a rut, and they get defensive, and they do the wrong things and say the wrong things and end up harming themselves. So you want to be careful about what you're going to do. Mm-hmm. I would not, people do represent themselves, some successfully. It does happen. But oftentimes, every day there's a new pro se, someone representing themselves, decision where it's just basically, it's a cut and paste of every other pro se litigant who lost. They failed to exhaust their administrative remedies or, have a claim the relief can be placed upon. Mm-hmm. Just time and time again it happens. And it's just they are lawyerly rules. Yes, it's an administrative body, but they do follow a lot of rules of evidence, and administrative law requires that you exhaust your administrative remedies to get the higher administrative remedy, because tax court is an administrative remedy.
And something else you said that really caught my ear during the conversation with your dad is the best ideas are never published. The best decisions are never published.
That's right. The best decisions are never published. Now, is this where I tell my story?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Yeah. All right. So this is, I think, enough time. Many years ago. My dad and I started this IRSMedic in 2006. So I think enough years have gone on where I could be honest about what happened. Okay. So that 90 days. Yeah, that's 90 days. It's not 91, I can tell you. Because I did file a tax court petition a day late. This was for a client. We had a pretty tough, and the tax court petition we're going to file, the grounds were terrible. We were right on the substance, but our procedure, he had the wrong form, and his employer refused to give him the right form, but he qualified for this treatment. but we couldn't get the IRS to see our way. So we're like, all right, well, I'm like, well, we'll file a tax court petition to see maybe if we can get the IRS to go our way. I didn't have a lot of faith in it. He wanted to do it because what else? What else are we going to do? The money at stake was like $500,000. So, it seemed like a cost benefit. We lost our appeal with the Office of Appeals, and we lost it hard. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't the greatest one, but, we decided to do it anyway. So anyway, I'm late, and it gets back. Yeah, you're too late. And I'm like, oh my God.
By a day, literally.
By a day. There's no relief. There's a few things you can screw up permanently when you're doing tax representation. One of them is missing a tax court petition deadline. The other one is being late for a claim for refund. Those are the ones there's no coming back from, except, right? What's that? The Princess Bride, there's dead and not really dead.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's not really dead. That was my dad.
Yep.
I came in and I told him, I said, guess what I did? I'm a day late. And he's like, okay.
It's a good thing he's a calm guy.
Yeah, he's like, all right. So this is what he does. He's like, all right, there's always a way. Okay. And I'm just like, just like, oh my God, this is the worst day of my life. I got to call a client to say I screwed up the thing that you should never screw up. I screwed it up. So he calls around. He's like, all right, I'm going to call somebody at IRS counsel. Okay. So he actually calls, the opposing counsel at tax court. Just like we don't have to, hey, Dave Parent, I dealt with your case before. Hey, so I got a little problem here. And he goes, he says he did it. I filed a tax court petition a day late here. Or he might have said the royal we. And he said, we got anything we could do here? And then the counsel's like, there's no way. There's no way. It's you're dead. But he goes, tell me about your issue. My dad explains the issue. He goes, you know where you should really go? Go to the taxpayer advocate on this one. Tell him this, and see if you can get someone, to hear your side of the story.
Wow. And
so my dad says, yeah, let's go to the taxpayer advocate. So then I go into, damage control mode, trying to explain to the client, like, we're just going to take a little bit of a different course. Longer. Looking at things, tax court's really a dead end for you, and taxpayer advocate. So it took 2 years. And my dad massaging the taxpayer advocate, and I had a little hand in that too. Ultimately, we had that $500,000 swing in our favor. The taxpayer advocate went our way. And it was really far better of a solution because tax court really would have been a loss. I'm like 98%. I could kind of just imagine, nope, didn't do it. She just got an employer to give them the right form. But here the taxpayer was like, yeah, we can see your point here. Yeah, it makes sense. Like, yeah, all right, they're not doing it, but really he is. Okay, gotcha. And it was like that. Okay, well, let me, it's going to take me some time. I got to do a manual override of the system. Yeah, do that manual override, man. And I'm like, oh my God, my dad saved
your life.
Right. I mean, but there's so many beautiful lessons in there. Okay. Even when you're dead, you're not dead. Don't stop dancing. Just keep going. There's something there. That's what you have to do if you don't screw up, you're not alive. You're lying. That everybody screws up. You want to have systems, and we adjusted our system so that thing won't happen again. And then just sort of ask around it, and there it is. And this is sort of how important it is to exhaust your administrative remedies, right? Taxpayer advocate wasn't even a remedy, but we exhausted it, and it worked. And
it worked out better.
It worked out better than, through our failure, we got the better result. And boy, that was a lesson. I mean, there was a lesson, and that's why, a lot of times people come in and they'll say, yeah, I want you to file a tax court petition for me. And I'll say, okay, well, show me what you got. And I'm looking at this. I'm like, no. I'm not going to do a tax court petition. You're going to lose. You haven't exhausted your administrative remedy, and you like, we can get another bite at the apple. Why don't you do this? I'm going to do this. I'm going to, we're going to keep this down to lower level. And we're going to just put things in a different way for the IRS to understand. And, that works. And that usually works. That's always worked for us. I mean, every time we've intentionally said, hey, look, we think tax court's a loser for you. You're not going to get the treatment you think you're going to get. You're really wasting your time. Let's go back. We need to give the IRS different facts. It's like they're giving you this result based on these facts. These facts suck. Change the facts. Here, these are the facts.
Yep. And, it takes a whole team of people here to get it right.
Yep.
And when people go in and they want to represent themselves, I think it's important to remember that the burden of proof is going to lie solely on your shoulders to prove that the IRS is wrong. And that's a huge burden.
And it's you against the world. And, they're there all the time. They know everything. This is your first time in there. Yeah, I would never want, it just sounds like a nightmare.
No. IRSMedic, the law offices of Parent LLP, real tax attorneys for tough tax problems.